Recently, there's been a lot of talk about tariffs between Canada and the United States and China, and with trade. And we're seeing how interconnected economic and manufacturing systems are impacted when certain things are adjusted, specifically when the flow of goods controlled by money gets adjusted, and how just that rate change, one adjustment in a system, can create a ripple effect of change. So that's one thing. That's a big on the large scale example. But systems that I've been thinking about are on a much more localized level, in our life. So we, with four kids, Sarah and I, working and teaching the kids and just having a full, amazing life requires a lot of harmony between things that are going on. So you've got gears, if you want to call them that need to work in harmony so that the household runs well, activities run well, everything works well. True for any household. So within that, when things run really well, whether you know it or not, there's a system. And sometimes systems can be a little bit more flexible. Sometimes they can be, anchored a little bit more sturdily. So those are in the household. I can see how there's real significance for that. But most of the time, well, I would say I kind of split it between the two, in our life and then also in our work, because those weave in and out, very closely. Systems with work, I'm seeing more and more the importance of it, meaning anytime an activity is taking place, often if we're helping build out a functionality in a team for a season, building out their marketing engine or whatnot, when activities are done, it has become increasingly apparent to us that you want to find once you know what the objective is, you want to find the best possible way to accomplish that objective. And the quicker you can figure out what works and systematize that, the better. As it stands, I think that we live in an age right now, unlike any other age in human history, where the capacity that we have to create systems is just remarkable. The fact that we are able to, with software and through the internet, be connected in such a way to draw upon this massive amount of learning that has taken place through human history with single prompts. And as those are being able to be utilized towards a single outcome, we are able to potentially achieve an outcome. And if we apply a systematized thinking to that, we can replicate that and set it up in a way where it should run well. That's amazing. Looking at the tariffs and things that are going on economically on the large scale, people talking about, GDP and the overall impact on nations and economies and on, everyday households and their ability to afford just their livelihood. There's this massive conversation happening about this and about natural resources and supply chains and how, who should do what and all of it. And rather than getting stuck in the very important, but the details of a lot of that, I just want to look at it as a whole and just kind of recognize that that system is very important. There's a lot going on in it, but look at something a little bit more localized. And back in a few years back, Sarah and I were able to help locally with the community to help some of the primary producing farmers in the region, to help them kind of facilitate the creation of a local verified farmers market. And it's a really, it runs to this day. It's a really incredible group of people, many local hardworking farmers that are primary producers. So that means that they grow and or produce, they create 100% of what they do or some percentage of that, but they're very transparent in how they let everyone know what percentage of it that they grow or that they prepare or whatnot. So really important for people that understand, and this was the key, the importance of a local food system. So we got this big macro, happening with economics and looking at supply chain and dealing with things like aluminum and steel and coal. Interestingly, fascinating the things you learn in this process. I think 8 new coal plants China opens up every single month. That's crazy to me. But it's interesting when you start to look at the raw materials and that flow of goods. But on the food level, on the local food level, it became apparent as we would listen and hear from local farmers and a lot of local consumers that were explaining to us the importance of a strong local food system everywhere, anywhere, not not just where we are, but the importance of having that fortification in terms of biodiversity, having engaging in whether it's permaculture or different forms of diverse agriculture that help to create a very biodiverse ecosystem. Yes, but also having the stability for food supply that, God forbid, there's supply chain breakdown or there's either man-made or natural disasters that happen that cause there to be shortages of resources in an area, that you're not so dependent, leaning in one direction, that you just completely, you're at the mercy of whatever's happening. So you want to have that local, strong food system. And it's made me, we're seeing this now on a larger scale with the economics, but it's made me think about systems in our own life, whether in our household or in our own personal lives, and systems in business. Systems, I've noticed with Sarah and I, as we are more mindful of wanting to age well and wanting to, be healthy and strong, and starting to realize the importance of systems to make sure that in a very busy schedule with a lot of amazing things happening, that we have the right nutrition at the right times and in the right proportion for us and for the kids. And also that we're able to prioritize things like stretching and exercise as well. So having systems for that, some more complex than others, is helpful for that. But noticing with the tariffs, the moment one part of a system adjusts a key component, and economically, finances are a key part of that. So money is that symbol of value, that transaction of value. When that thing adjusts, it creates a ripple effect in many other ways. And I've wondered in our life, when we adjust a certain part of a system, it also creates a ripple effect. Whether, sure, in work, but even if we just talk about our personal lives, when something like sleep, if a good night's sleep is disrupted, or if you're traveling and you're flying and you get up, you're running on a couple hours of sleep, the next day, it has a ripple effect that impacts everything else downstream of that in the system of your day, of the things that have to work in harmony with yourself. And so it really made me think, seeing this happening at the economic level with the tariffs and economies, and recognizing the fragility, maybe not the fragility, but the interconnectedness, I think, in a beautiful way of seeing where you see this in the free market, where you see free trade happening, or you see where you see free exchange of goods. So where a business or different businesses and nations and people cooperate to be able to choose to do business together to produce a good. And many times when multiple businesses and resources and nations are involved in that, that's a really cool thing to see what can be done when there's that kind of harmony. But also recognizing the importance of there being harmony in that process. So, I've been thinking about what's going on, and I don't fully understand everything that's going on. I, pay a little bit of attention and care deeply about, this nation, in Canada, and care deeply about the United States and China, um, and the nations of the world, and just so deeply want to see peace and prosperity in these nations. And part of that prosperity is finding ways that us as neighbors, whether we're neighbors in countries around the world or neighbors next door, that we can find ways to both prosper. I think that's so key. Systems, in our own lives, I know when we go to adjust something, when I started to make some serious health changes, a few years back, there was some real turmoil. There was turmoil in my emotions. There was turmoil in my physical body. It's sore if I'm working out. It's frustrated with me. It's like, telling, why are we doing this or whatnot? Why are we eating like this, drinking like this, or not drinking like this, not eating like this? There was real unrest in that time of change. And for good reason, I think, because if you're forming, even just in the mind, new neural pathways, you're literally forming a new path. Much like probably in the bush, if you're going and creating a new trail, there's no trail there yet. It's going to take some effort. It's not prepared yet. So it's made me think that regardless of whether it's looking at economic systems between nations or looking at systems in business, in creating, essentially trying to take an activity and systematize it in an intelligent way, using the right tools and having the right SOPs or standard operating procedures or checklists for that, whether we're doing that in our business or we're doing it in our home for our family, if you have kids, to be helping teach them and educate them, or for ourselves and trying to raise the standard in our own life, whether it's for our health, whether it's for our mental well-being, whether it's how we connect with others. As we do that, it's kind of a little bit, I think, like renovating, where it gets pretty messy. Even gardening, if you're starting to plant, there's a process of having to prepare that ground. There's a process, whether you're cutting that trail, of having to prepare that trail, to carve, to forge new paths. In renovating, there's a period where things look way worse before they're going to get better. And I really hope, and dare I say, pray that the current state of what's happening on the global level will result in great good for all involved. So, my encouragement, I appreciate encouragement, and so I offer it to you as well, that my encouragement to you is, if there's an area of your life or maybe your work where you look and realize that a better system would potentially help you translate or transform something in a more effective way, then to look and consider how to do that. Two resources that have been a huge help for me, one is the book by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time. And he, to me, I cannot think of someone else that I've met who has a more advanced understanding of creating systems and processes. Coming from a software background, it's no shock to me that he has found a way to essentially operate in life with his family, with his companies, with his teams, with the trips they go on, the things they want to do. He creates systems for all of these things, and essentially, much like a checklist or whatnot to follow, once it's been figured out, whoever's operating that follows that checklist, and they improve it if it needs to be improved. They just follow it. And it's almost like he and his team write code, but for real life. That checklist is the code, and they execute that code by ensuring that whoever is doing that task or running that project, that they execute that code on that piece of paper, so to speak. The other book is the book called 10x is easier than 2x. It's such a rich book. And one of the things that really stood out to me was they suggested that when you are looking to 10x your activities, you begin to, well, two things. One, the very notion of setting a 10x goal for yourself it so shifts your thinking, so that you're forced to have to engage in different parts of your mind and look at the world in different ways, because you can't just do more effort. You can't do 20% more effort or 50% more effort or 100% more effort to get 150%, 200%, more. To get 10x, it's a whole different paradigm. And so a lot of people get blocked with that mentally, because they think, how can I think 10x? I don't know how to do that thing. I've never done that thing before, and so those two things are stoppers. But the actual same logic that would stop you can be used to actually empower you, in the sense that, that's right, you haven't ever done that before. Otherwise, you would have those results. And the fact that you have not applied yourself in that way is an indication that you can apply yourself in that way. And so he's much better at explaining it than I am, but I highly recommend that book. 10x is easier than 2x. And part of the reason why I mentioned that one is that it helps when practically you begin to look at your life from a system standpoint and start to see if we can figure out the right way to do something once and it works, finding a way, a system, a routine, a checklist, an alert, a notification, a reminder, a check in with someone, finding a way to be able to do that will potentially take that one activity that you've done. And once you've created that system for that part of your company or your life, the creation of that in and of itself is a 10x activity action, because it has an impact far beyond just doing it once and then having to remember and go through it and try to get it right the second time, and then trying to tell somebody how to do it and hope they get it right, hope you remember everything. Instead, if you can create that system, you create that leverage. So buy back your time. 10x is easier than 2x.